Morning, Dev.
Morning, Dev.
Morning,
Morning, Dev.
Morning.
Hi, Dev. Have you got your
Hi,
mug? Da, 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 da.
Welcome to the Dev Chakravarti News with the award-winning cafe,
So
EV Cafe. 30
We
minutes
love
of
you,
what's
Dev.
happening in zero-emission transport with expert analysis from the EV Cafe crew, brought to you this week in partnership with Zaptec, EV Charging Done Better, and brought to you also by Dev Chakravarti. Today's opinions on a stick are, well, we can see them. We've got Paul Kirby. Now, Paul, you are somewhere on the continent, do tell.
In Normandy, in France, on a workation, staying in a friend's house, and I'm in the garden because I can be, I guess.
Paul claiming to have friends there, and we're also joined by Sam. Morning, my friend. How are you doing?
Who doesn't have friends?
Very well, thank you. I have at least two.
Friends? Sarah's one of them. And of course, the wonderful Sarah, who does charity work with Dating Sam Clark.
Hi, I've been filtering things from the EV Cafe at the amazing Car Fest this weekend. I'm very excited. This is my lightning bolt prop.
And we will come to last week during the chat because, what a week it was. But first, grab a cuppa. All got a cuppa this morning? Mm-hmm. Dev,
No.
have you got a mug? Have you got an EV Cafe mug? Do hope so. It has been sent out. So let's find out what's been happening in yummy transport this week. And coming up, a former Paralympic athlete calls for disabled drivers to be included in the transition to electric driving. And we're going to hear from Jonathan Jenkins from Motability Operations in a little while. A new report reveals that horses, horses, so it's posh stuff we're doing for you especially. New report reveals that horses' sensitivity levels to electric vehicles is there. They can actually sense an electric vehicle before people do. Interesting. Tarmac has a sustainability success, and they've outlined that in their latest report. The HMRC, bless their little hearts, cut the electric company car mileage rate from September the 1st. Doesn't that fill you full of joy? And Canada is going to impose a 100% tariff on Chinese EVs. But first, we were reached out to by a charging block manufacturer, EV Blocks. And very often, charging installations, they're the Cinderella product in the charging world. You know, the lump in the ground, the concrete that you bolt the charger to. Well, these guys have done something quite remarkable. They have one which is made from recyclable plastic, and we also have other companies like PLP who we've worked with. You don't just have to chuck a load of carbon-intensive concrete into the ground. You can use other products. You want to find out more? evblocks.com and plp.com. Those two guys not paying us any money. We just think it's the right thing to do. Shall we do the news?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Let's do it. One of Britain's greatest Paralympic athletes, Baroness Tanni Grey-Thompson MBE, has backed calls for all public electric vehicle charging sites to have accessible charging mandated. She says, "We were very close to buying an electric car, but when we started looking at the accessibility of the charging stations, it very quickly became apparent that it was a complete no-go. Many of the charging stations we looked at, I would not be able to use for many reasons, which include the height of the charging stations, high steps, gravel, and no wide spaces. One place we looked at, I might have been able to use the charger, but there was no accessible spaces, so I could not get my chair out of the car to be able to use it. There's also an issue with lighting. One place I checked late at night felt very isolated, and I wasn't sure I would feel safe getting out." Now, this is something we've championed, and we absolutely support Kate Tyrrell and Charge Safe in their quest for accessibility for all. And of course, looking at PAS 1899 compliance, it is critical that we do this. And the reason that it's so important is that Motability Operations have the largest fleet in the UK of vehicles, with 800,000 vehicles on the road, and 80,000 of those are electric. A massive achievement, especially in the face of the challenges that Dame Tanni has spoken of. Last week on the EV Rally of Scotland, Matt from Motability Operations was there, and this is personal experience from me. Matt broke his back. He fell from a cliff and was seriously in danger of being paraplegic. Anyway, he recovered to a point. He uses a chair and crutches. He did 500 odd miles of the EV Rally last week in an Ioniq 6. And what he does is he parks in front of the parking space for the charging bay and then uses remote parking with his key. So he gets his chair out, sets himself up, then uses remote parking. The car backs into the space and then he's able to use the charger. It's utter genius. And I loved seeing that his mental state was one that said, I can do everything you can do and I will find a way. It's inspiring, isn't it, Paul, to see people like this overcome challenges?
It really is. And the Motability operations and the Motability fleet has always been one that has been very close to my heart, because I worked with them, Mercedes, building drive from wheelchair vehicles where people literally would, and they could do this on their own, they could get into the back of the vehicle, they would wheel up to the steering wheel, or not a steering wheel. It might be even just a pipe which they blow in and nod and move their heads. I mean, it is quite incredible what people can do when they put their minds to it. And so the Motability operations, fleet, and all of the team there, the way they work with their clients to give them mobility is quite outstanding.
I must say, last week I used a high-speed rapid charger, really quick, and the cable was so heavy. And I'm 6'4" and built like a brick shed, and I did find it a challenge. Sarah, do you find charging a challenge? I mean, you've had your injury just recently. Is that continuing to cause you pain?
Yeah. No, well, of course, the injury is continuing to heal, but it has been a glimpse into what other people do have to deal with. And when EVs were a new thing, we worked with a car club in Bristol for trialling these EVs, but we had to turn away anybody who had a sort of registered disability with the DVLA, because we weren't, of course, able to adapt those vehicles to an extent that they could take the trial. It's a 2-week trial. It was a behaviour change project. So that was really tough and that was really hard. And at Carfest, there was somebody who came up and said that she can't drive electric because she cannot get her heart implant signed off. So yes. She's terrified of driving any EV at all. She was in the audience. But something that's more pertinent is just this week alone, I was asked about sort of payments accessibility, bearing in mind that contactless readers are sometimes really high or far back. And I did take a photo of one particular, will remain nameless CPO, that has a tiny sign really high up that says, if you need help using this charger, call this number. Well, to even look at the sign, you have to go over a curb and past a bollard. It's just not good enough. And credit where it's due, ChargeSafe has made huge inroads to making this a popular subject, to mean that policy can listen now and make necessary changes.
But it's fair to say, Sam, isn't it, that all charging was not created equal. And there are excellent charge points out there, charge stations, charge hubs, call them what you will, where there is accessibility for all.
Yeah, you literally took the words out of my mouth, John. There is absolutely a lot of really positive stuff out there as well, and we've focused 5 minutes on all the negativity, and it's right to do so because we need to highlight the things which aren't right. And the CPO that Sarah references, I do believe his three-lettered acronym is like an assault course for anybody, let alone someone who's disabled, to get anywhere near the charger. Or even, so it's very clear that the past regulations need to be mandated so that everyone adheres to the same rules. But we've got thousands of chargers out there. They're all accessible. The thing about getting the car moved as well is a great innovation. But as Gary said on the comments, it shouldn't be necessary. There's also the consideration of what kind of car you have, right? And whether you've got the connector at the front or the back. Because if you've got the connector at the front, then you can drive closer to the charger, still give yourself some space, but also be able to get your wheelchair, etc., out of the boot more easily. So there's lots of different ways of tackling this one. That there is some really good stuff out there. So we just need to focus on what's good, and also not just for the people who are disabled either. When I had a Tesla at first and I started using superchargers a lot, I think I tripped over the bump stops pretty much every time I got out the car. So, bump stops are an absolute nightmare for everybody because they just shouldn't exist, because they're just a trip hazard, a literal trip hazard. And plus the fact, if you get rid of all the curbs and you keep everything sweet and clean and tidy, a bit like Grid Surface Uber Hubs, it all looks neat and it looks tidy. It's easier to clean. It's less trips and hazards for everybody. So it's not just an accessibility issue for those that are disabled. It's an accessibility for everyone. For able-bodied people like me who still can very easily trip over something with that, especially when you've got a heavy cable and you're looking at a screen, you're not necessarily looking where your feet are. So, you know,
Paul's like,
but
we've
there's a
got
lot of
the expert on. Here he is.
Oh, we got an expert in here. Just shut up.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I'm
we-
the expert. I'm not sure I'm the
We have
expert. but-
we have championed accessibility for all for a very, very long time, and we're delighted to have Motability Operations Jonathan Jenkins with us. Jonathan, thank you for joining us at short notice.
My pleasure.
It was utterly stunning to see you and your team last week on the EV Rally of Scotland. I was talking about Matt, who
Yeah.
broke his back and uses the Ioniq 6 and the remote parking as a way of overcoming some of the tight spaces that he goes into. What was your experience like of doing the EV Rally of Scotland last week first?
Incredible, absolutely incredible. I thought the views were insane. I didn't expect it, to be honest with you. We were fortunate enough to do the rally. I did the rally with Matt. Matt is a customer of ours, a customer of Motability Operations, but also he's one of our EV specialists. So he knows what he's talking to. He speaks to our customers on a daily basis, our EV customers on a daily basis. But as you pointed out, he is a wheelchair user. And so we did the EV rally in a Peugeot e-Rifter. A wheelchair adapted vehicle. The vehicle performed so well. I've driven WAVs before and they rattle a lot and they feel like a van that's been customized. They're not perfect. However, I think in the transition to EVs, and you pointed out some of the technical benefits, actually, the fact that there's not as many moving parts means it's a really smooth ride. There's no rattling. It was like being in a car. I drove it for 24 hours over a period of 36 hours, and honestly, it was a joy to drive. The acceleration wasn't quite what I'm used to, so I'm not promising you kind of rapid 0 to 60 times, but the vehicle itself, it averaged 3.3 kilowatt hours over some pretty high passes, some difficult roads. It was brilliant. It was great. And the fact we got to do it with Matt, who, as I say, is a wheelchair user, meant we could see firsthand some of the challenges that our customers will experience when it comes to using the infrastructure. And I think, you know, as Sam points out, some of the infrastructure is there and it's getting better day by day. And there's some shining examples from both GridServe, Osprey, etc., of what accessible infrastructure could look like. I guess the overwhelming lesson for me coming back from the North Coast 500, where there's not that much charging, okay? There's not that much up there. You know, you're having to travel 50, 60, 70, sometimes 80 miles to get to a charge point. When you're in a vehicle with not much range, you can be a little bit nervous. We got round fine, but you are limited for what you can use. And I think Matt wouldn't mind me saying, if he was traveling independently and relied solely on the use of his wheelchair, he wouldn't have been able to charge. Unlike you, John, he's a big lad. Like me, he's a big lad. He is strong. But just the sheer logistics of being able to open up the back of the vehicle, as Sam says, the charge point is in the back right, where you typically see a sort of fuel inlet. It's next to impossible. Even if you can get in the bay and you can get the chair out, you can't get around the bay. And that was some of the more accessible sites we saw. So there are challenges. The cables are heavy. Even the assisted cables, if you are a wheelchair user, it's still incredibly difficult to move that. I think, Sam, you hit the nail on the head when you said it depends where the charge point is. I mean, the manufacturers haven't made it that easy and not standardizing where those charge points are. So how do you actually design a charge point around, if you like, a moving goalpost to a degree? We found that if the charge port was in the front of the vehicles, then the majority of charge points we used would have been far more accessible. I'd be interested in hearing some of the feedback, particularly from yourself, Sam, as to your views on that. I've heard some other feedback that suggests from other CPOs that a front charge point would mean you're reversing in a hub into a space where there are pedestrians. Does that cause any safety concerns? But really, for us, it was a great experience. However, a lot of customers have come back to me and said how many of the charge points were PAS compliant. And the message I give there is not as positive as the rally was as a whole.
And what was really interesting was watching Sorry, Paul, go on.
Well, I was just going to say, I think the charge points that you'd have been experiencing would have been deployed some 10 or 12 years ago in many cases. I mean, I know the ones at John O'Groats were probably a bit newer. But I think it is this thing. We've got the charging out now. There's a lot of charging for the general population, but we need to sort of think more inclusive across the piece now. And is it now time for the pass regulations that have been out for a couple of years, as Tammy Gray Thompson has sort of highlighted here? Is it now time to make that mandatory? As a way forward, because we can all remember the building accessibility regulations when they changed and every public building had to become accessible. Maybe over time, for future builds of charge points, it is time to legislate for this.
And you're probably right, Paul. I guess what I would like to see is a move in that direction, but a move alongside industry. So work with the key people in the industry, work with the Gridserves, the Ospreys, and understand, how can we make this more accessible? I think it's fair to say that nothing in this world is accessible for everyone. What are the pieces that we need to change, that we can change without bringing the whole rollout to a complete halt, that would make it accessible for the 95% or the solo wheelchair user that needs the charge? And that might be a change on the vehicle, and maybe an adaptation that we can look at. Like I say, work with the industry. We want to work with the industry and stuff. What are the things we can do that would make a significant difference? For me, putting a charge port on the front, I feel would make a significant difference. Cable weight, a massive factor, as Tanny Gray said. Screen height, also a massive factor. We're moving in the right direction here. I think one of the other things the Motability Operations is trying to do is trying to highlight the different attributes of charge points. So at the moment, sometimes it can be hard to even know whether a charge point is working or not using the various apps we have. We need to go a stage further than that. And so what we want to do is bring our customers in, but also bring the industry in to share more detailed level of information around, as I say, the attributes of that charge point. So does it have weighted cabling, weight assistance cabling? Is it a drive-through charge point? Let's get some pictures, some good pictures up that the customers can start to see. Is this mounted on a curve? Therefore, it might not be right for me, but there's one in 5 miles time that actually might be much better. And it removes a layer, I think, of anxiety. I feel, Paul, you're absolutely right. The next 5-7 years, we are on a transition, and we will get there, and we will have a fully accessible infrastructure. But there is always going to be, not always, but there will be for a foreseeable future, legacy infrastructure in play. And so it's important, I think, that we show to our customers, what are the kind of, what does that charge point look like? Do I feel like I can use it? And it's a transitional piece, because we will get there. And in fact, some of the leading CPOs are getting there. But the infrastructure is going to take a while to catch up, because there's a lot of legacy stuff out there as well.
What we'll do, Jonathan, is today on our LinkedIn page, we'll ask for photographs of good installations. We don't want to see the bad. We know the bad is out there. We want to see the good. We want to see what you've used that meets the regulations and is just a joy to use. So we'll put that up there, and that gives you an opportunity then for us to share with you that information, the sites that are compliant and are a joy to use. 80,000 of your users can't be wrong.
Absolutely. So I guess the other thing I'd mention to any CPOs listening, to yourself, Sam, we have people that are experts in this space, that are design experts, that we can start to, loan out, send across, so they can work with you on what are the things we can do to make these things more accessible. We want to partner with the industry. We're not just expecting this to happen. We know that it needs to be through collaboration. And so, speak to us, talk to us, and we are more than happy to support where we can.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point at the end there, is that collaboration is key. 4 years ago, or whenever it was, when we built Braintree, one of the first things we did was have some people in wheelchairs come down and say, what do you think? How do you, is this working for you? Is it awkward? Is it difficult? What can we change? So we started that learning 4 years ago by doing exactly what you just suggested.
And any route, Sam, to customer, our customers are keen. They want to work as well with the industry. They want to see this happen. We don't want to leave anyone behind. So if it's a route to customers, a route to users, if it's research, etc., we are more than happy to support in any way we can.
Brilliant, Jonathan. Thank you so much. Just a quick shout out to Katie Lake. Katie says, hi, everyone. Just dropped in on this stream. I live with MS and have a scooter. She's also got ASD and ADHD. We can't thank you enough, Katie, for dropping in. It's really important that you do. Glad you found us. Jonathan, thank you for joining us. You've been outstanding. Last week, this week, every week. You are just the cat's pajamas.
Great to see you guys, and thanks for highlighting this really important topic. Appreciate it.
Cheers. Cheers, buddy. Thanks for joining
Cheers.
us. Right, let's move on. The British Horse Society, in collaboration with Robert Gordon University and Electric Vehicle Association of Scotland, have launched a report analysing how horses respond to the noise of an electric car. Bottom line is, they do recognise an electric car way before the rider does. And what is really important is for drivers to continue to remember to go ahead slow when you are near horses, because they do sense you're there, but we need to take some responsibility for how we drive. Paul, do you ever forget that you're driving an EV and that other people don't notice you're there?
No, it's one of the things that I'm conscious of. Many times when you're driving quite slowly in a pedestrian kind of mix area where parking or that sort of thing, I'm conscious of it. But also I'm very aware, from a horse perspective. My daughter has a horse, and she's just getting it used to being ridden and stuff like that. So getting out into the public domain, she has had cars drive past, and we do need to be aware, and it kind of follows on nicely from our last topic, really. Just to be aware and be sensitive of everybody's different needs. And horses, if they get spooked, and they do run, as we saw, I think, in the run-up to the Trooping of the Colour, 5 horses broke free, and these are well-trained horses that absolutely lost their minds and headed out and got injured, and could have potentially been really tricky. So it is very important, and for my daughter's well-being. There you go.
Absolutely. I'm going to butt in because this story came from the Car Fest. So we were positioned next to the Horse Society, and the gentleman was saying, this is a science issue. This isn't a behavioural issue. This is about the horses sensing the car and the bad rap that EVs get, being silent and creeping up on horses. So it's great to dispel that myth, number one. Number two, it was actually a call to the riders to be more aware, because they're chatting away, much like bike riders often do. Bear in mind, I'm a bike rider, and you're not really paying so much attention as you should be. So that's the dual effort here, is doing what you can as an EV driver, but also if you are a horse rider or have a horse riding community, make sure they're aware too.
Absolutely right. Now we're going to do a quick shout out. We are so far behind, but do you know what? We made space for Jonathan Jenkins on Motability Operations, and I don't care. So, Gary Comerford, hello mate. He was fabulous last week. Came to Car Fest, lovely to see you. Carl Elliott, hello. Economy Trucks, greetings. Graham McLaren Harris, oh, he's got a lovely pink hand. The legend that is Dev Chakravarti is in the house, people.
Morning, Dev.
Morning, Dev.
Are you there?
Hey, Dev.
Oh, hi, Dev. Oh, I didn't see you there. Dev. That's good.
Leon Gomez, hello, good morning, my friend. Who else we got? Holly Baldwin. She's here every week, bless her. Thank you kindly from Greenfleet. See, we mentioned the EV Rally of Scotland. It was a success, thanks to you. Michael Barton from sunny Bristol, he's always here too. Pam Hanlon, thank you. We don't take this for granted. Mark Main, it was a joy to see you this last week and to shake hands. I'm getting a pointing finger from Paul, but I don't know what he's pointing at.
Yeah.
I don't know what it means.
LinkedIn user Peter Heath.
Peter Heath, there you go, from PLP. He was the one that I was on. Thanks, mate. Really appreciate that. Sarah Gray, hello. We mentioned you, Peter, earlier on, plp.com. If you want to get your recycled plastic charger things. That's a technical term. Shane Reese.
Pedestal.
Toby Hiles, Top Shirt JC. You ain't kidding, kiddo. Ron Godfrey, hello, my dear. Who else we got? Sarah Sloman, who's she? Charlene Tattersall, good morning. Alexis Furt, great name. Michelle Breffett, hello, Michelle. From Women Drive Electric. Richard Hallett, hello. Clive Wilcox from the AA, they were fabulous. At Carfest, on the EV Rally of Scotland, and we were so well looked after. Thank you so much.
John?
Ooh, yes.
It's just occurred to me that our good friend Dev can now join a elite group because the EV King, Mr. Edmund King, has EV in his name. We know we've got Matt Cleveley, who uses EV in his name. And, of course, Dev is spelt D.
Well
EV.
spotted.
EV.
So you are now the third person that we know that has EV in their name.
Dev Chakravarti,
Well spotted,
DEV. He is now forever known as DEV.
DEV.
George Lemon. Good morning from Women Drive Electric. Rob Dustin and Nick Hoolin. Do you know what? bless your cotton socks. Tarmac, they've done lots and lots and lots of things to reduce their carbon emissions. At the close of year, they achieved a 32% reduction in CO2 per tonne of product compared to the 1990 baseline. Absolutely outstanding. They are now using the first all-electric ready-mix concrete mixer. It's expected to save 42 tonnes of CO2 annually with 0 emissions per mile compared to 1.55 kilograms of CO2 per mile for its fossil fuel equivalent. They have done some remarkable things. Sam, is business embracing sustainability still, or is it now too expensive to do and people are just using the cost of living crisis as an excuse?
But it's about both, isn't it? Right? And the big companies are doing some great things. Maybe the small ones struggle with sustainability and the costs thereof, perhaps. But news articles like that, are all power to the elbow, aren't they? They're just, it's good news stories, and it shows that we're going in the right direction. Just need more of it.
Yeah. HMRC, they're reducing the advisory electricity rate by 1 penny per mile from the 1st of September, down from 8 to 7 pence per mile. Sarah,
Yes.
why would they do such a thing?
I didn't know that was happening. That's news to me. Wow. I don't know. It was 3 years ago I was saying it needs to be 12p. And I appreciate that it sort of rested around 9 for a while, but I just don't find enough people who can make that number work for it to make any sense to me in my head whatsoever. I don't get it. Crazy.
It's mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling how they can not factor in public charging and the costs thereof into the mechanics of this pence per mile. It's absolutely ludicrous.
Paul might know.
It is absolutely ludicrous. However, companies can make their own choice around payments, as Lorna McAteer has demonstrated. She pays whatever she pays. I don't know what the number is, but as long as you can justify it to the HMRC, it is in fact an advisory rate, but it just gives a guide. And obviously, as long as a company can justify it, then it's okay. Also, you could also take the not the fuel option and charge back your energy in completion. So, I mean, there are a number of ways around it, but I do agree the HMRC rate is a bit illogical, as somebody has sort of suggested.
I guess it's all a bit woe is me, really, when you've got pensioners who aren't getting the winter energy payment allowance without filling in a 236-point form, and it's just a travesty that we treat people the way we do in this country. Anyway, let's move on. Canada has said that it will impose a 100% tariff on imports from China for electric vehicles, following similar moves from both the US government and the European Union. This has got to be detrimental to the transition to zero-emission vehicles, in my opinion. We need good quality vehicles from wherever they come from, frankly. And Paul worked with BYD last week at Carfest. They had quality vehicles at incredible prices. What's the problem?
I think the problem is that the wider world is waking up to the fact that almost every car sold from China is making a loss, and they're government supported. So I guess that's sending a sort of a negative message into the market, saying that the Chinese government are falsely reducing their prices is what the sort of that seems to be the triggers. I don't know what's right or wrong here. Is it right to have government-sponsored owned manufacturers? I think the ones in the commercial space probably, that are standalone companies maybe have a different take on this, but the government sponsored ones, it does kind of, it kind of feels like a challenge. I can understand why other governments are protecting their own workforces or whatever, but it's a tricky one.
The bit that bothers me,
you want the electric transition to go forward.
The bit that bothers me is comments like the Prime Minister said in terms of wanting to transform Canada's automotive sector into a global leader in building the vehicles of tomorrow. I mean, since when was Canada ever a country that build vehicles for it? Stick to what you're good at, guys. Clearly, you're not going to be building the vehicles of tomorrow in Canada, are you? Let's be honest. It would take decades and generations in order to win that market share, in order to be that. So, stick to what you're good at and let the other, it's just a point I made. It's just a bit sensationalist, isn't it? From the leaders going, wait, we want to be the leader in this and leader in everything. I was like, well, Yeah.
Sarah, final comment from you. A LinkedIn user who might be Peter Heath says the government has much to do to create and communicate a clear EV strategy. Amen to that, don't we say?
Yeah, and actually, I was on the EV Musings podcast this week, and Gary Comerford asked me the exact same thing. He's putting together sound bites from lots of leaders about what should the government be doing to greater support this. And the one I see and hear, and I do go into the Lion's Den of Facebook sometimes. It's a terrifying place, but people do consistently bang on about how expensive the vehicles are. So it makes me think back to when I first got persuaded to go EV, where the price parity between my diesel and my EV was demonstrable, and that made sense to me. But that was only possible because of a £7,500 grant. I can't see that coming back anytime soon, unfortunately. So we've got to find another way.
All those
Used
Stellantis
vehicles,
this week.
used vehicles.
Well, used vehicles one way. Stellantis now offering a BEV and petrol at the same cost for the new Frontera.
Yeah, the Frontera.
Yeah, so it's definitely coming. Sam.
It's 10:30.
Well, thanks for that. The speaking clock is back. If you have any clean transport PR or news stories you'd like us to cover, please send them to us at hello@evcafe.org. Until next Friday, it's goodbye from me and it's goodbye from them. This has been an EV Cafe production brought to you this week in partnership with Zaptec, EV charging done better. Other sustainability news services are available, but this is just fodder!
Butter!
So delayed. Bless, it's amazing.
EV Cafe is
Me
truly
being
blessed to
delayed.
be partnered with the AA, Webfleet, Europcar, Paythrough, Iveco, Zaptec, Drax, Sperry, Stuart Science, Hydrock, Allstar, Schneider Electric and Dynamon with EV Cafe, supporting the transition to zero-emission transport. Thank you for joining us. It's meant a great deal to have you back. Enjoy the rest of your day and your weekend, wherever it takes you. Till next Friday. Bye!
Hi, Dev.
Bye-bye.
Toby Hiles is rude. I did say
I